Tonight's class, basically, guys, is going to be about preparation and some soldering. These are cutters. That's what we cut our pipe with. Anybody ever used them?
Yes.
Okay. Basically, you're just going to open them up. Take a piece of pipe. Put it on there. Snug. Spin it. Snug.
Voila.
Alright?
Look at that.
Wow.
So, go ahead and cut a piece off of there about 6 inches long and then hand it to him.
6 inches.
Close enough. It ain't gotta be perfect. Gotta open it up. Don't
That's
snug
too
it so
tight.
tight that you're gonna break the blade. Just snug it enough to where you can spin it. Now you gotta spin the tool. Right. It's too snug. Back it up. So you can't turn it when you get it that tight. What you do is you cut a groove into the pipe now. And you bend it. What you're gonna do is you're gonna just snug it. Just like that. Spin it. Snug it again, spin it.
Let the tool do the work.
There you go.
Tighten it.
There you go.
One more?
Go ahead and cut it again. Put them all up into 6-inch pieces, practice. The bird's got 2 rollers right there. Snug it up, spin it. Snug it up.
Almost there.
Put a piece off of that one.
How big?
Just cut a piece off. It's no different than cutting a small pipe. You gotta cut it, spin it.
So that toilet, do you think that'll be a selling point?
That ain't so easy either. You know why? It's a K-copper.
Get the blade in the groove.
Take your time, Milo. Not
I
a race.
had a problem with that one. It slid a little bit,
There you go.
but eventually I just held it there. Yeah.
Work as hell, isn't it?
Stick it to that wall.
Okay. Put some calluses on your hands. We're gonna grab a piece of sandpaper. Grab a piece of half-inch pipe. Sand both ends, 2 inches down.
Clever. Guys are clever.
So you can only clean one end.
How do you determine when it's
Since it's bright and shiny, doesn't have any black on it.
okay? Good.
When you're done, pick up another piece of pipe, sand the ends. Thing about soldering, guys, is preparation. If you don't have clean copper, it's not gonna stick. Anytime you have a piece of copper that has a dent in it like that, you gotta cut it off.
Okay.
Because what will happen is you put that in the fitting, solder will not fill that.
You cut that off?
Yeah, you can cut it off. Yeah, solder won't.
I thought it would fill it and it wouldn't
Yeah,
matter.
solder won't fill that. There's a lot of people that have tried to do this and solder. It's not gonna work. Solder will not take. You can heat that pipe till it falls apart. Because you have to use what we call flux. This is flux. It's a paste. You put it on the pipe, just like that. Or put it in your fitting.
We were talking about that.
The other, take a rag, go like that. Get all the excess flux off of it.
I never used that when we would do it and air conditioning. Is there like a reason for that?
It's a different kind of soldering.
Because air conditioning uses silver solder. Air conditioning doesn't use this type of solder. So basically, I'm gonna show you. Get your solder. Now pretty much, if you're using a 1/2 inch fitting, you shouldn't be using no more than a 1/2 inch of solder.
Easy cut.
So make sure your fitting is heated.
How can you tell? Color?
That's the learning.
Wow. Not done.
Very hot. When you're done, you can wipe your joint. The solder goes all the way around. This ain't hot enough, but normally you can take that and go like that, and that sucker will still run solder. So, set that over there, let it cool off. So, everybody get a piece of 1/2 inch pipe, grab a 90. Let's flux it up and put it together.
The whole.
There it is.
For you?
For you, Myrtle?
Do you need one there? You have one.
No, I'll take it.
But if you want to pick it up with your hands, feel free. Because you won't do it again. Burn yourself one time and you will not do it again. You put enough flux in there for 14.
The next night? Wanna wipe it with this?
Yeah.
Dennis, does flux conduct the,
Flux creates a chemical change to the copper which allows the solder to stick to the molecules
Alright,
of the copper.
gotcha.
Without it, all you're going to do is burn the copper. Now, you can burn copper if you get it too hot. Copper starts to turn black.
the soft metal, isn't it?
Yep. The only time you burn copper is when you're using silver solder. So, you can lay it like that. Go ahead and take the torch. The hottest part of the torch is the end of the flame. You want to move it around a little bit and heat it evenly. You can move it to, there you go. That is coming, that copper's hot. Burning it. Keep the flame on it. Okay. Okay. Monkey balls. See that right there?
Yes.
That's called monkey balls. It just looks like it.
Yeah.
We don't leave monkey balls.
Okay.
That's why you wipe it when you're done.
I see.
It's too late, you can't wipe it now.
Okay.
And if you reheat it, you'll screw up your solder joint. Next.
Learn the lesson.
That's why you're here.
All right, Milo, get her done.
Bring your tank where it's at. You don't hold the tank. You can't hold the tank. If you hold the tank, how you gonna hold the solder? Back up. Squeeze trigger.
Clever device, isn't
Back
it?
to flame off. Back to flame off.
Very safe.
Yep. You're hot.
I think the key is moving that flux. There's a technique to moving that flux. So
Squeeze it like you got a pair. Alright? Now what do you do?
that's good.
It's not bad. That's how the kind of touch you gotta learn to do with that
Yeah.
solder. You know, you let the solder, you touch the solder, it automatically melts into it.
Solder touches the hot copper and it runs round.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
if you move your piece of pipe comes off that table, it's because you're pushing on it,
Yeah.
which means that you can get hot copper. That's good.
I don't think that'd be a good idea.
Why turn the flame off?
The big one?
Okay. Solder me a fitting on that one.
These fit?
Yeah. You'll find out that
Oh, he's on.
K copper isn't as forgiving as that little half-inch copper.
Get her done. This is much more satisfying than PVC.
Yeah,
Isn't it?
Yeah, you're right. I know I can see that, but I like that part.
Nice one. Right on your donkey. Come on, open those channel locks up, son.
You drop it on the floor?
Yeah.
I don't know about that one.
That didn't solder.
That just run around now up there?
Gotta heat it. Gotta heat it.
Yeah, know when that's
That's
hot.
K-copper, man. See the solder.
Oh, I'm still trying to get the fitting on that.
It's raining now. We got some monkey balls on there.
You get the one.
Yeah.
Try again on it. That's the door.
You did hot dog.
I figured that once it started not dripping.
It's smoking now.
I'm just gonna use another one. Is that hot still? This one here?
No, they might have.
A little warm, yeah.
Watch out, see if it's dripping on it. I don't want you to drip on yourself.
So, you dropped it. And it came out. See the way it's setting? It's crooked. No good, guys. Okay? When you put it in there, when you go to wipe it off, if you gotta pick it up, you can't drop it. It's hot. It's a liquid. Came out, so. And what causes it is actually the wheel on those cutters.
All right. Puts a lip on it.
It spreads it.
Yeah.
It's a real pain in the ass. This one's definitely been cut. Spread. You're not going to sand the copper off. That's the reason why when you're cutting K-copper, feel that lip. Your cutters won't do that. So let's everybody grab a piece of the 1/2 inch. It should be cooled down by now. And resand your end and let's solder a coupling in there for me. What this causes the solder to flow in the seal where the flux is and causes it to stick to the copper.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
So that's.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with pulling pipe together.
So the flux is like a bonding agent?
Yeah, the
Okay.
flux is a bonding agent.
Okay, I got you.
And if the copper's not clean, the flux will not let this copper stick to it.
Okay.
Now, that's when you're doing a lot of soldering. You know, that's when you'll break these out. It's called a B tank. So instead of a little hand torch, you got this thing. It's the same damn thing, guys. Does the same thing. Except this burns a lot hotter. But on commercial jobs, when you're doing a lot of solder, you use those because it's a hell of a lot cheaper than using mat tanks. You go through so many of those mat tanks, and they're like, what, 12 bucks a piece. So you fill that up for $20, that will last you 50 times what that'll last. See, that didn't solder all the way around. Now we could try it, reheat it sometimes.
Does that continue to run? Is that what you're trying to do?
You can see solder changes from a dull shape to a real shiny shape when it gets hot. So that's another way you can tell when your solder is flowing right. It'll get real shiny. See how it already worked its way around?
Yeah, that's great. Salvaged.
Sometimes you can do that. If there is any moisture or any water present in a pipe, you cannot solder it. It will not solder it. So that's the reason why, you know, dry copper like this, you can solder it. But if that had any moisture in it or a few drops of water, it won't solder.
How far
Because of
away
water.
from the joint could water be present?
Well, 5 inches.
Okay,
Depending on the size of your pipe.
okay.
But most pipe that you work on, you know, in a house has had water on it. So you gotta siphon the water out.
Sure.
You know, you can take a straw, stick down in it, and do the old gravity thing and get it out. They make what they call a sweat joint. It's something that goes down in. It's a plunger. Tighten it up, solder the joint, pull it back out. On commercials. I have a freeze kit. The clamp goes here. The clamp goes here. Turn on the nitrogen. It freezes that water in the pipe, and then you can solder it on both sides.
That's pretty handy.
There's ways to get around it. Now, a freeze kit won't work on moving water, so if it's a leak and the water's moving in the pipe, it'll never freeze it. It'll only work on a pipe that doesn't have running water in it.
Standing water. Right.
Yeah. But when you're working on a 3 or 4 inch line, it comes in handy. It's called a freeze kit. Wraps around the pipe. Connect your freezer to it.
Yeah.
Turn it. This hooks up to the gauge, which is right here. Screws on here. This screws onto those silver bottles.
Yes,
That's liquid nitrogen.
got you.
It'll freeze your hand off in a second. The only time we use this is like if we're working in a nursing home where we can't shut the water down. You got a valve that you can't put the pressure off to it. And we'll use the freeze kit. Done all your soldering. I have to put a test gauge in a residential building to test it. Put it under pressure. Copper. We'll put under 160 pounds of pressure. And that's the gauge we can use to test to make sure you don't have any leaks.
Sure.
So that hooks up, and what we can do is put it on there, leave it for 12 hours, come back, hook this gauge up. If it drops 1 milliounce, the gauge will read it. So.
Sensitive.
But that's only on new construction we do that on. Repairs, since you turn the water on, if you got a leak, you need a face full of water.
Great.
I mean, your solder joints, they look decent. You know, for guys that have never soldered, you know, I think they would all hold water. Just got to remember preparation.
Yeah.
That's the most important part. Cleaning the copper, cleaning the fitting, putting on your flux, wipe your joint, solder it. And you keep the heat on it till you're done.
Let me ask you this. Say we had a utility sink and it was copper in a house and it was leaking. Could you drain the system, make sure it was dry, and then resolder that joint instead of taking it off and putting a new elbow in, for example, or 90 or?
It's hard to do.
Okay.
Once copper's gotten old,
Yeah.
it gets oxidation on it, and unless you take it completely apart and clean it with a wire brush, you can't just resolder it.
Okay.
Yeah. Once that fitting is a couple years old, you're not going to
You're
resolder
better
it.
off taking it off.
Yeah. A lot of plumbers think that, you know, they can resolder a leaky coupling. No, you can't.
Okay.
It's never. It might hold for
Yeah.
a couple days, but eventually it's going to leak. Put a bunch of pipes together and connecting to old pipe, and it leaks. You try resoldering it second time, and it still doesn't take. Cut it and start over. Don't try to keep resoldering, because all you're going to do is you're going to burn the copper up, and the more you burn it, the softer it gets. And on a house, they use roll copper. It's real soft. You'll literally burn holes in copper. You won't use this as much. Put some heat on it and just hold it there. copper, guys. See how it's still copper shiny? Watch it. It'll start changing colors. See how it's starting to turn black? It's too hot. And that's what it'll look like when you let go. You don't tarnish the copper. That copper is totally friggin' worthless. You'll never solder it. Cut it off and start over. The difference between this and refrigeration, that's what you want to do with refrigeration.
All right.
Because you use silver solder.
Okay.
Silver solder requires you to burn it.
I see.
Because silver solder is so much harder than soft solder. Soft solder will not take the pressure. So, now silver solder, you don't use anything. You don't use no flux, nothing. Half time, you don't even, you can lightly sand your pipe. You don't even need to sand the pipe because it's going to burn it. And any impurities that are on that pipe is going to burn it off.
That's gotta be a lot trickier than working inside closed quarters, because you're holding the heat on it for long
Sure.
periods of time.
Well, most of your air conditioning soldering is done outside, you know, except where you connect to the unit in the attic or in the garage. But, you know, a guy that does it every day, you know, I mean, I like silver solder. I've come across pipes to where I couldn't get them to solder,
Yeah.
and I'll cheat. I'll use a piece of silver solder because it'll solder. Now, if there's moisture in it, it won't even silver solder, guys. Moisture is the biggest enemy when it comes to soldering pipe, when it comes to heat. Any moisture whatsoever, you're done, you know. Now, if you got a little bit of moisture in there and you hit it, the pipe steams, it'll burn out the little bit of moisture that's in the pipe, then you can solder it. But if there's water continuously dripping, you're wasting your time. So, hose bibs on a house, for instance, a lot of people, you know, try to solder a hose bib on when there's water dripping, just a drip. Drip. Won't solder. You can solder copper to brass. Now you gotta flux it. This is a collar for a urinal. Same deal. Clean your brass.
That's going to require a lot of heat, isn't it? Moisture in there. I see it bubbling. See that, Mark?
Brass solders, 2 copper. And that right there is, you thread a fitting onto it.